Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, episode number 32, I think. December 6th, 2020. Guys, what's going on? Are we going to have a December to remember here as our first show of the month?
Yeah, I believe so. You know, this is our first December as a show, and I think we'll be making it a memorable one here. We'll have quite a bit to talk about, and we have quite a bit to talk about today. We have Longhorn Insider Michael Holland joining us. Mike, caught you mid-drink. That's, I'm still trying to polish up the hosting thing, man. And, I actually did a little, we had a food raiser, we called it, down here yesterday from 12 to 12 for the Buda Chamber. So I got to MC that a little bit and get in front of the camera over there too. I'm trying, Mike. I'm working on polishing up for you when you come in. But
hey, you guys are doing a great job, man. So what do you guys think about yesterday?
Oh, well, before we kind of break down the game, I'll preface this saying, to go into Manhattan, Kansas and win the way that Texas did against a program that has really had the Longhorns number since the Big 12 was created. You would think coming out of that game that you would feel a lot like, what a relief, how great would that feel to just beat down K-State? Finally, turn it around on them and just give it to them. Does it feel like that today?
Oh, it feels like I'm feeling a lot of emotions about the Longhorn football team today, but relief is not one of them. I would have to say you're exactly right. When we preview this show and we look at this at the end of the season, we're all skeptical of going up to Manhattan at the end of the year and figuring out a way to win up there because you never know what you're going to get. I mean, turns out the conditions just happen to be some of the best conditions that they've had up there ever, probably. But no, I would not say I'm relieved, or there are some positives that came out of here, and we're going to hit on those later. But Mike, what's a word you would use to describe your emotions or feelings about yesterday?
I think after this season, I'm just numb to everything.
That's a great way to describe it.
Really?
No, I think my fingers are sore from banging on the keyboard on my phone, rage texting about the potential of this Texas team and why we see everyone involved, and just I don't even know how to describe yesterday. It was like, what are we watching right now? 69 points. Yeah, I don't even know where to start. I mean, everyone was involved. This is what you thought. This offense, not 69 points, obviously, but I mean, this should have been a team that averaged between 40 and 45 points for the most part. And it just was super frustrating to see that we had to wait till game 9 to officially unleash Bijan Robinson. And I know Whittington's been hurt, but, just getting him on the field is such a huge difference. It's just all around a great offensive performance. The defense was a little suspect, especially with a pretty poor quarterback play. But this should have been the team all along where if the offense was struggling one game, the defense could pick you up. And if the defense was struggling one day, the offense should have the ability to throw up a 50-piece. So it's just a weird day with everything surrounding, everything that's going on the 40. And I don't know, Kerry, what are your takeaways from this?
Let's start right at the top. The headline, at least in terms of the actual football game being played, has got to be Bijan. This guy is just absolutely unreal. And, before we kind of get into talking about where has this been all season with him, to kind of appreciate the day that he had yesterday. And, the numbers look great. And, I know he had, broke some big runs that, kind of keep that yards per carry average up there. But God, does he pass the eye test? And that's something we talk a lot about on this show about, does it look right? Does it pass the eye test? Is this something that you can see with your own eyes that you get excited about? And man, he looks damn good. And I think It's
But he
just with the
still
nature
only
of this
touched the
program, you go,
ball
God, well,
12
there goes one
times.
season for it. What's that, Mike?
He still only touched the ball 12 times.
Well, right. And that's what you just go, well, why didn't he get a single carry versus TCU? And only 5 against Oklahoma. Like that's
Amazing.
kind of that's when I know I was going to say, well, let's before we start talking about the rest of the season with him. Yeah, he had a great day yesterday. He looked so good. Like he looked like a powerful runner, a confident runner. He's the complete package.
Yeah, he's the real deal. I mean, and when you talk about the type of running back at the University of Texas that finishes runs, that makes people miss in space, that is just as valuable as a receiver out of the backfield. Excuse me, just as valuable as a receiver out of the backfield than taking a handoff from your quarterback. It just looks like from just the small sample sizes we've seen that sort of thing doesn't lie. Like you said, Kerry, you can sort of see there are players that just have it, and it doesn't matter if it's in small doses. Like Tom Herman and this coaching staff seem to have just had to. We can only give him the ball. It's almost like they're treating him like he has this amount of carries at the University of Texas that he's going to reach, and if they reach that, he can't play anymore or something. I don't understand why he hasn't touched the ball like this. I mean, why he hasn't touched the ball more all season long. And Mike, to your point, we were texting throughout the game. And it was at one point he had like 140 yards and it scored a couple of times already at least, and it was on 5 touches or 6 touches.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you wanted to see all year was just this kid. Obviously, almost all recruiting sites had this kid as the number 1 running back, and I get that there are little nuances and things like that. That you have to learn going from high school to college. But at the end of the day, there's not really anything that hard when you just snap the ball and hand this kid the ball. I mean, you saw some explosive runs. You saw the speed. You saw the power. I mean, number 31 got run over twice yesterday. So I'm sure he's had nightmares last night about.
There he is chasing him in that picture right there on your screen too.
Exactly, man. Like he got just. I mean, he wore that kid out. So
yeah.
And then all this just circles back to just the entire season for me, Kerry. Roschon should have been getting the ball on the goal line in a lot of these situations because you see how hard he fights. I haven't seen a running back fight this hard for yardage in a long. Like he does not quit on the play.
No. And I actually want to step back to something I mentioned a minute ago. About him not getting about Bijan not getting carries against TCU. I think that was actually when he was out after that ill-advised hurdle. That put him out.
So they still would have given him 5 carries. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered because Keontae Ingram still would have, carried the bulk that day against TCU. But yeah, I think the tandem there with Bijan and Roschon, like they just complement each other so well. And I know there was the news this week about Keontae Ingram opting out for the rest of the season. I guess it's still up in the air whether or not he's going to transfer out of the program or not. I mean, we'll kind of see how that plays out. But even if he does stick around and stay in the program, it's really hard to see how you can kind of break this tandem up. These kind of seem to be your 2 guys going forward. And, we might be waiting a while before one of them is getting like a 20+ carry type game because they both are really, really good and provide something different.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And Mike, that play that you're talking about down on the goal line, excuse me, guys, that play that you're talking about down there on the goal line where he was stopped, Johnson was stopped at the 2 and spun around. The replay that they showed on the broadcast was just awesome because you could see his feet pumping the entire time. His feet never stopped moving. His momentum kept going the right direction. And then he gets over the goal line because of a great effort and a decent push by the offensive line. But that was a great individual effort by him. And it is very easy to see now what this formula is moving forward and getting Bijan Robinson the ball early and often and then working in Roschon Johnson, who, for those that don't know, is a converted quarterback.
Yep.
And so the fact that he is there right now in this position and has worked out to the degree that he has is pretty amazing. And that's going to be actually, I think, one of the lasting, I guess, when somebody wants to give an argument about how someone was developed or sort of, a skill set was brought out of somebody during the Herman regime. I think Roshan Johnson will really stand out in that regard. But yeah, Mike, I mean, it looks like as Charlie Strong would say, in terms of the running back room, the cake is baked.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to give a lot of credit to the offensive line. They were much maligned for the early part of the season, but I think it's a unit that's played pretty well. You had the news that Sam Cosmi opted out, so you're kind of wondering what this offensive line was going to look like. And I think Carrick got in there after the terrible Kerstetter injury, but I'm hearing some positive. I thought that was, potentially like career ending. That was Gordon Hayward, Paul George style. I thought he broke his leg, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it turns out I think it's a dislocated ankle.
Yep.
And in a weird way, he might force his hand to come back for another season. You're looking at Cards, like he played. I sent Jay a clip yesterday on the reverse to Jordan Whittington.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this kid, he's a beast. Like for such a young age to have that type of tenacity. And then Christian Jones played really well yesterday, and Jake Majors was awesome in his start at center. So you're looking at some really young guys, and I think the future's looking a little bright. I don't want to overreact on one game, but Kansas State, they're no slouches on defense. I know they've had some injuries and some issues with COVID, but that type of performance wasn't expected out of the Texas offensive line, no matter who the opponent is on the other side. And they came out, and these holes were pretty big. We gush about Bijan and Roshan, but there were some massive holes that these guys were running through, and and then you get them into space, and they may break one tackle, and next thing you know, it's going for 20, 30, 40, 75 yards. So that was real encouraging to see, Courage and Majors out there, two highly recruited freshmen from the last year's recruiting cycle. So a lot of positives. I think you saw a lot of great things out of the tight end group, as well as the receiver group. They weren't asked to do as much, but they were solid. So at the end of the day, though, this is what, like we were saying, this is what this kind of should have looked like for the most part. And I don't think it really changes Herman's future. For me, it's almost a too little too late. Like, you can't show this type of performance when in the most pressured situations and things like that. You didn't try to get your guys the ball to make things happen. So I don't know. It just makes me look back at the entire season as a whole, and just makes me really disappointed as to what happened.
Yeah, you can't. It's a tough pill to swallow when the coaching staff, more correctly, like the head coach throughout the season, when asked about the offense and stuff like that, says things like, "Oh, we do what the defense allows us to do. Like, the defense dictates where we go with the ball." And then to come out and finally look like an offense, like the offense was dictating what was happening there. It was, you talk about the offensive line, the run game, like they went in with a game plan, what they were going to do, and they unleashed it. Like, and they scored 69 points. Like, what a concept. Like, you actually decided to take it to a defense and dictate the terms of what the offense was going to do. And you absolutely nailed it. It just makes the whole season so frustrating, because I think we agreed going into this season that the weapons were there for this offense. They were there. This was an offense that was primed and ready to go to score a lot of points and be a really dominant, not just in the Big 12, but dominant offense, like in the country, like one of the more high powered offenses out there. And just to see them kind of just poke around the entire season and just look like there's no, I don't know, aggression, and then save it to this point, like when Herman's hot seat is on fire. Like, you're right, it's too little too late. Like, while it was a satisfying win in a way, it's kind of bittersweet.
Yeah, Randy Rodeo sent us an article this morning, and it was really just focusing on the fact that, yeah, I mean, Tom Herman has basically he came into this as not necessarily the underdog in terms of the betting line, but the underdog in terms of saving his job. And when Tom Herman's an underdog or can fill that role in his own mind, he's a very successful coach. And otherwise, he's it just doesn't seem like he is. And at the University of Texas, you can't be an underdog coach because that's not what the University of Texas is supposed to be. That's not what the expectations are. And when you have, especially when you have this much talent on your roster and you see what they're capable of at any given time when put in the position to be successful, Kansas State was a little bit depleted yesterday, but those are still guys like Mike was describing, like that's a system that they play in over there, and guys are interchangeable on each side of the ball. That's just the way that that program is run. And those, they were finishing plays yesterday. The offensive line that was I thought was going to be a bit of an issue going into yesterday proved me wrong and played very, very well. So it's just one of those things where you can't expect an underdog coach to be successful at what's supposed to be a powerhouse, a blue blood, a contender, if you will, on a season and season basis. It's he's not the right fit, Mike.
No, yeah. Like talking about the whole underdog thing, it's like as soon as the line came out for Iowa State and Texas was a small favorite, I was like, well, it's like Vegas dictates Tom Herman's
Yeah.
coaching ability. Like it's really weird. Yeah, I mean, you saw some flashes of some things during his tenure, and I think this is it. I think, obviously behind the scenes, there are things that are happening that, obviously we got the slide up here where, Texas looking hard and trying to get Urban Meyer. You don't want an underdog coach at University of Texas. And so who's who's the farthest from that? And that's Urban Meyer. So, Kerry, I don't know what you think about if there's any chance for him to save his job, if Urban declines, or like where do we go from this point, I guess, because it's probably going to be a really awkward week again. From the 40.
The short answer to your question is no. I don't think there's any way for Tom Herman to save his job at this point. The reason I think that is because I think I don't have much, this isn't like insider information. It is more kind of a hunch and kind of putting together some pieces that I've seen from some various like reports and sources and that kind of stuff. To me, it seems like the administration's mind has been made up, and that the administration's mind has been made up since the Oklahoma game. Since then, Chris Del Conte, various people could have come out and basically given the vote of confidence for Herman. They could have said, no, he's our guy. He's we're moving forward with this. There has been none of that from the people above Tom Herman for months. And to me, I mean, when we talk about, we're going to get into recruiting and those things, those are the kinds of things that can save recruiting for Tom Herman, all that kind of stuff. Like whether or not the recruits want to come play for Tom Herman's another thing, but it's a totally different animal to just get that vote of confidence and get the support from the administration. He's had none of that. So I think whether it's Urban Meyer or not, and I think we're going to find out pretty soon whether or not it's going to be Urban Meyer, I don't see there's any way back for Tom Herman to be coaching at Texas in 2021. I just don't. It's too far gone at this point. Like, how do you recruit? How do you provide any sense of how do you sit with a recruit's family and say, like, I'm going to be there for the next even 3 seasons, like while your kid is at Texas? Like, how can you provide that kind of stability and that image of a program when the athletic director, the university president, regents, donors, all those things seem to be completely aligned in getting Herman out?
Yeah, I think to a point where this is kind of a weird end to the recruiting season, because you've got National Signing Day 1 coming up soon, and the guys that are staying on, they obviously know that change is coming. So these kids are the ones that are locked in because they want to go to the University of Texas regardless of the coach. But you're going to miss out on some guys if you don't get something done quick. And then you're right. Like, how do you sit there and say, come to Texas and play for me when I might not be here in in a week. Like, so, you know, I don't see a way Texas finishes out that strong with recruiting. I mean, there's just almost no momentum with the 21 or the 22 class. I mean, look at LJ Johnson. He had a huge jump in a lot of the rankings that are out there just after a phenomenal season. If this is a kid you can land, that would be great. I don't know how you land this kid when you don't have a pitch, because you don't know if it's going to be Urban Meyer or if it's going to be, you know, Bronco Mendenhall or Mario Cristobal. Like, you don't know who the coach is going to be, so you don't know their style. So how do you as a highly rated recruit decide to make a decision based on basically nothing? Like, you're just saying I need to go to the University of Texas, even though it might not best suit my skill set with the coach that they'll bring in. Like, it just seems like a tough sell, and we'll see what happens here in the next couple of weeks. But I mean, it's just been a very lackluster end to the recruiting trail. So,
Yeah, 100%. And when you talk about the sort of going in there with, if you're Chris Ash and you're on the recruiting trail right now, you know, those recruits know that there's a chance if Urban Meyer were to come on that Ash would be retained. That's a big plus for that side of the ball, in my opinion. But you're 100% right in terms of the uncertainty, in terms of the just not being able to go into those big recruits, those, you know, those more highly rated recruits, living rooms and talk to their parents and convince mom to let the kid go, that, you know, to make her be comfortable sending her baby off to play football for you or for your program, for the program that you're currently at. It's just tough for me because we felt at one point in this season when we were talking recruiting that there was momentum, there was a path to sort of setting the tone for what's to come. And Tom Herman absolutely dropped the ball, and everything has come to what seems to be a screeching halt in terms of any momentum with this program, with anything around this program, whether it's development of some of these players, that even it's recruiting, whether it doesn't matter, whether it's continuing to insist on doing some of these rotations and not having some of your best players on the field at all times. In every sense of the word, or in every sense of the phrase, Tom Herman has seemed to drop the ball here, Kerry. And it's just, whether it's Urban Meyer, whether it's Bronco Mendenhall, whether it's Mario Cristobal, whether it's somebody that we haven't even talked about yet, which we've talked about this offline, is we kind of have to prepare ourselves for what's going to happen if Urban Meyer doesn't work out, because it just seems like at this point with this program, nothing seems to work out the way that it's supposed to anyway. So I'm mentally preparing myself for it to not be Urban, but you know, it's just one of those things where a decision needs to be made quickly. Like you said, Mike, with this first early signing period opening up here, they have to make a decision. It should or get off the pot. And if it's Urban, then make it happen. And if it's not, well, you need to, even if it's just firing Tom Herman without somebody in place, I think that's the right move, because it's like, well, there is no question that Tom Herman won't be back. I don't think you can just pretend any longer. There's no more of this.
Watching his press conference is so brutal. Like, he's sitting here saying how everyone's aligned and he trusts his bosses, and I'm like, he even tells a reporter at post game, he was like, I know you guys think I'm lying, and I'm like,
well, Kerry, how do you feel about that? Do you think he's telling the truth?
Who would ever think he'd be a liar? You know what? The thing is, and Mike, we were talking about this before we started the show today. What feels different, this feels different than every other Texas football kind of coaching search in our active memories. This feels like it's being handled differently. There's a different feel about this whole process. You're not hearing any leaks. You're not hearing Red McCombs speak up and say something out of turn. You're not getting any of those kinds of things this go around. And Chris Del Conte's kind of previous history shows that he handles these things extremely well. He runs a really tight ship, and he does not make a move until things are absolutely lead pipe locked. Like whether that, having the replacement lined up, having buyouts, contract things, all those stuff, all the things ironed out. And that's where I think this thing's going to actually move pretty quickly. Like from what I was hearing yesterday, basically Oklahoma winning last night mathematically and officially eliminated Texas from Big 12 championship contention. Officially. Well, there you go. Now that box is checked off of the expectations that didn't get fulfilled. He actually has something on paper instead. There's no fluky chance that Texas still ends up in the Big 12 championship next, in 2 weeks or whatever the hell it's going to be. But like, this feels different. And that's what gives me confidence that it's going to end up being Urban Meyer. And I think it's going to have to happen fairly quickly if that's the case, because the early signing day period that we're discussing, even if you don't get any like commits to like flip to Texas, then you might be able to get them to delay it out till February. You might have some of these recruits in this 21 class to say like, oh, okay, well, maybe I was wanting to sign somewhere else on the first signing day, but now that Urban Meyer is going to Texas, I'm going to push this out to February. Joel Klatt mentioned it on the broadcast yesterday, something about like, just get it done regardless. Like Tom Herman's going to have millions and millions and millions of dollars to carry off into the sunset when he's gone. He'll be fine. It's the players, it's the assistant coaches, it's the people around the program, the support staff, all those things that are kind of, wagging in the wind right now. And I want to believe, I think the athletic director at Texas is a professional enough to understand what's at stake here. And I think that, like Klatt said on the broadcast yesterday, you just rip the Band-Aid off. If this is the move you're making, get it done. And that's where I think if we start, I don't know if this is a bold claim, but I think if Tom Herman's rolled out there for a press conference on Monday, a game week press conference, then I think it might be safe to say Urban Meyer is not going to be the guy, because if he was, I think they're going to rip that Band-Aid off before National Signing Day. The first one, at least.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that necessarily. Urban wasn't wearing his burnt orange tie yesterday, which I was kind of disappointed to see. But it's interesting to hear. I just love to listen to him talk about this football program, like the sort of. He talks about it like a football program, like the University of Texas football program should be talked. He talks about it like it's his own child, like the way that he says, this is what it should be. This is how this should happen. This is the way that things should go at the University of Texas. And it's not from a place of like, of saying necessarily outright that somebody's not doing a good job of that right now. But just hearing him talk about the football program, it's like, man, you just wonder. You already see what his ceiling is, and it's one of the best college coaches of all time, in my opinion. So imagine what somebody with that type of passion that's never really even spent much time on campus, but he's going to get here, and even with whatever health stuff he has going on, that he's going to give you everything he has. And you just feel like if you're going to get the best of Urban Meyer, then you're going to win freaking championships, man. You're going to win trophies, and you're going to become the program that we all expect the University of Texas football program to be.
Well, and just real quick on that, I mean, that's what Chris Del Conte was hired for. He was, Tom Herman wasn't his hire. He came in basically given the keys to the program and like paid like one of the top athletic directors in the country to fix football, to fix this department, to fix Belmont. And his legacy is tied to this hire, this firing and the subsequent hiring.
Great point.
From what he's done with the women's basketball team, what he's done at TCU, the hires that he made there, I really have confidence in him to get this right, because there is no other option. I think it's Urban Meyer or bust, or else, I mean, we're looking at another however many years of wandering in the wilderness with this football. And it's because that's what we talk about. Cristobal, God, what a terrible loss for Oregon last night, by the way.
I
Mhm.
mean, this guy seems like he doesn't want to come to Texas.
But like, what other option is going to completely overnight change the complexion of this program to recruits, to fans, the whole thing, and
Yeah.
erase, maybe not fully erase, but really flip 10 years of mediocrity on its head?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit here, Kerry, though. I don't think it's Urban Meyer or bust. I think it's Urban Meyer or bust as far as like a quick turnaround into
Yeah, yeah.
championships. But I think, if we all remember Mac Brown, he was like, everyone wanted Gary Neuheisel or whatever it was.
Barnett, yeah.
I mean, Gary Barnett, yeah. Gary Neuheisel, man, that's taking me back to childhood. Jeez.
That's a hybrid right there. That's
Yeah,
a mix of Gary Barnett and Rick Neuheisel.
Nobody, yeah, Rick Neuheisel, yeah, man. So like I just think that we all want, because we're so desperate, especially after this season and what should have been, that we know that Urban Meyer could come in and next year we could contend for a Big 12 trophy. Like we just know that. Like it's
right.
It's almost written, but it's like, yeah, you're right in a sense. Like if we don't get him, like it's going to take someone to come in here, and it's going to take 2 to 3 years to try to establish something. And who has the pedigree that's even remotely close to what Urban Meyer could bring? And we always talk about we don't want the upstart coach. I don't like the mid-major guy coming here. I want the head coach at a Power 5 school that at least knows some of the pressure that and what it takes to coach at this level. I don't want an assistant coordinator at a big time school. I don't want a head coach at a Division II school that's winning titles. Like, yeah, that's great and everything, but it's just a different level of expectation when you're at the top, one of the blue bloods at the top of any of these conferences. Like, there's just expectations that have to be met, and yeah, it'd be really tough to find that diamond in the rough. But I want to believe he's out there. I wish it was Tom Herman, man, but he just can't get out of his own way. Like, and it falls back to what we talked about. Like, he just wasn't ready for this. Like, and LSU's probably like, oh man, thank God.
Right.
So I'm a fan of Bronco Mendenhall. I still like Mario Cristobal, even though these last 2 losses have been pretty because these guys are coaching at Power 5 schools. Like, and I think they could have some success if they come here. And there's some nervousness about this whole Urban Meyer thing. Like, yeah, we're staring at, like you said, Kerry, that's on a lot of people's minds. Another 10 years of irrelevance if we don't get this guy. Like, that's just a scary thing to think about with the program going forward. And I just, I want to believe that there's someone else out there that if this doesn't work out, that could jumpstart this thing. But it's going to be Chris Del Conte making the decision of his career basically at Texas. Is going to be just, if Urban Meyer doesn't take this job, who is it that is going to take, the next step with this program? And nobody knows who can do that because there are not a lot of big time candidates that are out there. Like, Mac was always a huge recruiter. Like, you knew he could recruit. He just, for whatever reason, just couldn't get over the hump, and he finally did when he got here. So I don't know. That's just kind of my take on the whole thing, because I'm feeling a little less confident about Urban, but maybe that's just because of the back of my mind. I'm just nervous about the entire situation.
Well, and Kerry, real quick, I just, like, it's that one line, the line that stood out to me in that article that Randy sent us was, it's not so much that Texas is 6-3 this season or that Herman is 31-18 overall that suggests he's not the right coach for the Longhorns. It's the pervasive sense of ordinary they project on a weekly basis.
Yep.
It's exactly what it is. And so I'm more than willing to try to go for broke here and not be ordinary and get an Urban Meyer. You put everything you have into this. We're tired of ordinary, Kerry.
Well, that's the thing. I think Chris Del Conte recognizes that. He's got a south end zone that's under construction. He's got a basketball arena under construction. The last thing he needs is fan apathy, donor apathy, university apathy, all those things. I think and that's what, like, these things leading up to this, what we've seen, how this has played out, gives me confidence that this thing is going to happen, because I mean, I know he doesn't necessarily have to, and we got about a minute here, so we'll kind of wrap up on this. But like, Urban Meyer hasn't denied any of this. There hasn't been a statement of like, I'm not coming back to coaching. I'm not going to coach at Texas. Like, there hasn't been any of that. There hasn't been any of like people close to Meyer coming out and saying that that's the case. This sounds like things are actually being handled behind closed doors, and we're going to find out eventually. I mean, there's either going to be a press conference saying, you know, thanks for everything, Tom, but you know, it's time to go, which I think is going to happen regardless. But the timing of that, I think, is going to suggest otherwise. But Del Conte cannot afford to get this one wrong, whether it's Urban Meyer or whoever else.
Nope, absolutely.
Well, guys, let's take a quick break here. Let's talk about, we're going to get into some positive sports discussion on the other side, some Runnin Horns. So yeah, we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show. Let's get right back into this here. We transition away from talking about the football program to a little bit more of a please. Can't transition quick enough. Some positive sports experience this past week was the Runnin Horns, the Texas basketball team, winning the Maui Asheville Invitational, brought to you by Camping World or whatever it was, you know.
And Bill Walton.
And Bill Walton, yeah.
Oh man, did you guys? All right, so I used to turn the show, like the TV, off when I heard Walton. Like, I got to that point, and then I didn't mind, and then he wore on me, and now I got back to the point where he's so far gone. It's entertaining to me now. It's not even annoying. Like some of the places that he went, it was. Anyways, but that definitely added to the sort of environment, I guess, if you will, for the viewer.
You didn't know Kevin Garnett went to Texas?
Yeah, that was my favorite tidbit.
From the jump, man. Just man, it's like, here we go.
Yeah.
For a roller coaster.
I just I had it on, like, I was trying to avoid doing a little bit of work and had the game on one of the other monitors, that first game where Walton was calling it, and so like I just kind of had the audio to start the game because I wasn't actively watching it, and I was like, oh man, I can't do this. Like, how am I going to hear what's actually happening in the game when it's just like Bill Walton being pumped into my head, like trying to do work or not do work. And so it was like, it's like, okay, I'm killing the audio, and like, I'll just flip over and watch a little bit, you know.
I know the guy that's the sheriff in the 9th smallest county in Virginia. And it's just like, what? And then he started talking about some philosopher and reading the book, and they cut his mic off. And the other guy was like, "Oh, think Bill went to Jupiter real quick. He'll be right back on with us though." Like, he was talking about. They had to cut his mic.
You know how hard of a job it is to be opposite, like to be the other guy in that situation.
Yeah, you're like trying to be a professional, right? Like, hey,
but the guy likes Bill. You can tell he likes Bill.
Yeah.
They were giving each other shots the whole time, and if that's the guy, it has to be that guy. And I hope he was compensated very well for his time, because he deserved it after that. But they did get to call some really impressive Texas performances along the way there.
Yeah, and Texas came away with the trophy. And I know we can talk about,
hang the banner.
Hang it up
right next to that NIT championship.
But it does. I do think there's something to be said about becoming like serial winners, right? Like,
oh yeah,
that addicted to winning mentality. And you know, we've taken our shots at the NIT and some of these other, like, you know, things that Texas has won, but like, you have to kind of start getting that winning feeling. What does it feel like to actually win a trophy, to celebrate with your teammates, to have like leave any kind of tournament with a positive like reinforcement about how good your team and your teammates actually are, and your coaching staff, and you know, whether that's for the fans, the players, whoever. But like, it's an early season thing, but it's the Maui Asheville Invitational. But like, Texas beat some pretty good teams on the way to winning this tournament. Mike, what do you have in terms of like the significance for winning this tournament, and kind of how this sets up Texas going forward?
Yeah, so I think I did my job getting you guys on the train before it left the station.
Yeah, we're on board.
Choo choo, let's go.
No, I mean, we're talking about this before we went live again. It's like there's just not a lot of weaknesses when you when you look at this team. For me, the guys look like they're having so much fun out there. They really do. Like I get winning, cheers all and makes everyone happy, but the game winner against North Carolina, like the pure joy from like Courtney Ramey running and like tackling, and then Greg Brown, man, he just seems like the biggest cheerleader, and he's all UT obviously, and just to see their reactions, because I think they know that they have a pretty big ceiling this year. We'll pull this up here. So you got some wins here against quality opponents. Obviously, you beat up on Rio Grande before the tournament started. But, I think a lot of people were nervous when you saw the Davidson game and come down to, final bucket. But that's a good team. I mean, that's a 7-9 seed and a good early test. And, that game was an 11 a.m. game, like on the East Coast. You had travel. So, I mean, you have all these factors, and they're no slouches. And then you come out the next game where I think people were like, man, is this team going to really, do anything this year after that performance? And you just come out and you just smack Indiana, who just beat down Providence the day before by 20, and you win by 20 plus. And that's a really good team. That's probably going to be, a 5 to 7 seed right there. And then you look at North Carolina, who it's not your top 5 North Carolina team, but it's still got NBA players, and Roy Williams is still the coach. Last I checked, he was there on the sideline. And you got up to a great start, and you closed it out at the very end. And, the 6 guys that are pictured here, man, these are really the guys that are, spearheading it. And then the guy that's not on here, Brock Cunningham, has just been huge for this team. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the game today. You got 12th ranked Villanova here in Austin. That starts, I think, at 12 today. The line opened Villanova -2, and now it's swung to Texas -1.5 right now. So, I mean, the full hype train is there, guys. And the thing with this team is that if one game Greg Brown's in foul trouble, then you got Kai Jones coming off the bench and dominating. If Jericho Sims is ineffective, Royce Ham comes out and does all the dirty work on the glass against North Carolina. So I think just overall, you've got so much depth and so much talent. The 3 guards, man, any one of these games, one of these guards could take over. And it's been Coleman averaging 16 and 5. You've got Ramey averaging 15 and almost 4. And Andrew Jones just now getting into the swing of things after being out the first game. I mean, he's probably your primary scoring option when you need a bucket, under 5 seconds to go. He can create his own shot and can really fill it up. So it's just super exciting to see the performances. And I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in these next couple of games. As you see, we have Villanova, you squeeze in Texas State, and then Baylor. So this is going to tell you everything you need to know for the rest of the year for me.
Yeah, and before the season started, Shaka made the comment that 6 guys had really stood out among everybody else. And I was thinking, well, is that just because he didn't want to, paint himself into like a starting 5 right away? But you're saying, oh, well, there's 6 guys that are there, that we could maybe. But no, it's been 6 guys that have really stood out above the rest, like you said, Mike, and have carried the bulk of the work for this team. But that's not the whole story. There are so many players that are going to play just their key roles and get 8 or 9, maybe 10 minutes max a game, but are going to come in off the bench, step up and get rebounds, play good defense, and just it's the first time for me in a while that I'm watching the Texas basketball team and I'm feeling like this is a cohesive unit. They're playing as one. This is when you hire Shaka Smart, this is the sort of team that in my mind I was thinking, because before he came here, all of his teams always, he had a reputation of being a good coach because you could see he had well coached teams on the floor. And since he's been at Texas, it's been hit or miss at times in terms of the type of team that you see. At the beginning of this season, with the way that things have been firing off on all cylinders, with the passion that this team plays for and for each other, and Coleman for me in the pre show in the preseason show, Coleman is the guy for me that is really going to be the sort of the driving force behind this team being, winning a 1 bucket game or losing that 1 bucket game. And I don't just mean he did hit the big shot, but I don't mean, obviously I agree with what you're saying in terms of who that end of game shot taker would be, who can get off and get his own shot in a tough point. But Coleman for me will continue to be the driving force behind this team. And I think we'll see if his play fluctuates a little bit through the season goes on, I feel like that's where we'll really see the Horns struggle a little bit. But Kerry, what are some of your feelings coming away with, like you said, raising a trophy in the Poulon Weed Eater Camping World Maui Asheville North Dakota Invitational quarantine?
Brought to you by Tinder. No, I think what's encouraging for me is like, with Shaka, we've seen some pretty big like early season wins, like,
Yeah.
where we kind of go, okay, maybe this is it. And I think back to like the Purdue win last season. And this was something I heard kind of being discussed after this North Carolina game, was like that Purdue win last year, which gave a lot of people hope, like, oh, hey, this is, maybe they've turned the corner kind of thing, but they had to play a perfect game.
Yeah.
An absolutely perfect game to beat Purdue. This team has yet to play a perfect game. They're finding different ways to win. They're finding just the depth is there. We've discussed that a ton. Like, that's what gives me the most optimism, is that, if this team starts to play, I mean, it's hard to say play a perfect game every night, but like, if they don't have to play perfect basketball to beat Villanova today,
Yeah.
look out.
Yeah.
They probably have to play perfect to beat Baylor in some of these Big 12 opponents. And probably, I guess Villanova's up there too, but like, they're going to start ironing out some of these things. Like, they had a big lead at half against North Carolina. They kind of, almost kind of let the game get away there, but that experience at the end showed. We talk about Coleman. We talk about like kind of the older guys on this team that have been around for a bit, and that experience showed against North Carolina. And there's a lot of layers to just what this team, like, it really is kind of a sky's the limit scenario here.
Yeah, it really is. And I think with that Purdue win, you didn't see Texas running off Davidson in like crushing Indiana, then beating North Carolina. Like, Purdue win was kind of an isolated, like, you know what I mean? Like a performance. Like with this, you can see, and they won these games in different ways. Like that's
right.
What the amazing thing about this is. And I love that you can just play so many different styles. And this team can play in the 80s if they wanted to, or they can play in the 50s if they wanted to. I want to shout out Royce Ham, man. Like, this guy, he's a warrior. I mean, he came into the North Carolina game when Greg Brown, Jericho Sims was kind of a little ineffective that game, and he came in and was doing everything, blocking shots, grabbing rebounds, putbacks. I mean, it's like, man, this is your 8th, 9th, 10th guy right here, and he's just coming in and changing a game into which it's a matchup between top 20 teams. I mean, that kind of luxury is great, and that's what you see around college basketball. I follow college basketball pretty like almost as much as I do all the other sports, and the biggest thing that stands out with Texas is depth. Like, you're going to see in the Villanova game today, Villanova basically plays 6 guys. Now, 5 of those 6 are really, really good, and this is a top 5 team. And they have, championship pedigree, all the superlatives about a, top 5 program. But you're going to see the center, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I mean, this kid is a load, and he's going to be an NBA player. And you got Colin Gillespie as a senior, and he's the point guard. And the guards, these guys, they look different. These guys are big guards. If you look at Texas, we're more of the, the quick, speed type guards. These guys are like big. Like Colin Gillespie will post you up. Like they run post plays for him. So you're going to see. I'm interested to see how Texas is going to handle this style, but they're built to handle different styles because of the depth. Like you can play different ways. I think Donovan Williams might be in this game a little more than he has been the last few games, and that's the luxury that you have this year. Like a lot of these, North Carolina didn't have any depth. Like Indiana had no depth. Like there's not, the 7th and 8th and 9th guys aren't coming on as former starters and things like that, and guys that can just change the game for you. They don't have that in college basketball. And that's where Texas' biggest advantage is right now. I mean, look at Kai Jones. He's averaging 11 and 6 off the bench. Like, so.
Yeah, it's quite a luxury to have that, man. And then to be able to really play so many styles, as you both mentioned, it sort of lets you know that if a team is going to, is more physical and you're going to have to use up your fouls, it's nice to know that you can pull some guys off the bench to give you quality minutes and play and fit a role, and just not really have to worry a ton about, okay, so we used up some fouls. Maybe we would have rather had, whether it's Coleman or Brown again getting into foul trouble or something like that. But you just know that the depth is there, and that's also something that in terms of Shaka having to really have a 7-guy rotation in the past, maybe 8, and that he feels even remotely good about. It really goes past that now, where even if you do have an injury and you get into foul trouble, you still feel good about your options. And this is a nice little couple of games here against Villanova and Baylor that will be some tests. And if they do slip up and take a loss in one of those, or maybe both, it's going to be, how do they respond coming off of that, and how do they look losing too?
Yeah.
While they haven't played a perfect game, like Kerry mentioned, there have been some struggles at times in spurts throughout the games of giving up some offensive rebounds, or maybe not taking the shots that they need to take in order to just to be successful on the offensive end of the ball, forcing things a little bit. So turning the ball over a little bit. So, I mean, for me, it's just we're going to see. I love that they're having this many tests against some teams will be in the tournament. This and not like at the back end of the tournament. These are all top 7 seeded teams, probably towards when we're looking at a tournament. So I'm just looking forward to this test today and seeing which way this game goes and how the Longhorns respond to the flow of the game, because it just seems that because they have so many players that can contribute, like you were mentioning, it makes me feel confident that this team won't get in a rut at any time, because they can sort of be that chameleon, I guess, if you will, to adapt to the type of game that they're playing.
Yeah, and something that you brought up during the previous show, Jay, that I was thinking about the other day was, so obviously we had the news that Will Baker decided to transfer after the first game of the year. He put out a post, and it was very, very emotional, and you could tell that this was a really, really hard decision for him to make. And it just goes back to the point where these players love Shaka Smart, and you can see this permeating throughout this program right now. Like, this kid could have left a long time ago, but he wanted to stick around, and maybe thought that maybe taking a redshirt year and doing all this, but at the end of the day, he wants to play as a 5-star player that just hasn't really worked out for him. He's one of these kids that if he goes to a mid-major, he's probably going to be the lead dog on that team and average, 18 and 8. You know what I mean? So I just find it super fascinating that Shaka is, and I don't want to be the guy that's like, okay, the first 4 games of the year is going to make the entire season, because there's still that doubt that this whole thing could come crashing down. But the eyeball test is what we talked about, and the eyeball test is passing so far, and also you see the camaraderie, and then you see how hard it is for someone to even decide to leave the program, and it's just crazy to see. Like, I don't know. I'm super excited about this team. I do think the sky's the limit. I mean, you beat Villanova today, guys. I don't know. We're probably talking about resetting expectations. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and I also think another thing I'll throw in here is that we're still waiting on that Greg Brown breakout game where he just takes one over. And I
Yeah.
think we talked about, like, Mike, me and you before the show, kind of how you kind of started to see that in the North Carolina game, that confidence start to come out where he started wanting to take charge of situations. And I know he got in foul trouble and that kind of hampered that. But I think we're going to start seeing he's growing into that role. He's getting more and more comfortable at this level. He's a freshman. He's only 4 games into his career at this level. And I think as this progresses, he's going to become more and more like of that
Like,
superstar
how
that we think. And
scary
that
is
just
that?
adds another level to all this.
Yeah, scary.
But yeah, I think Texas beats Villanova today. I think it's safe to say, yeah, expectations start to get reset a little bit because the Horns are staring at top 10 ranking in the face next week. And that Baylor matchup looms in Waco. And I think that's going to be, this team's going to lose games,
Right.
but like you guys just hit on with the eye test thing, as long as this team is battling and they're putting it, like they look the role, I think we got a good one on our hands here. So
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we'll know. I think we'll know early on in this Villanova game if they come out flat, if they've been patting themselves on the back a little bit. And a lot of people have been telling them how great they are lately. So,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you see, okay, now you've tasted it. You're continuing to grow that winning culture. You have played well. You've played well enough to win and beat some good teams along the way. Now, do you continue to keep your foot on the pedal and really play like a team that we'll look at in a couple of weeks and say, well, this is not just a possible 4 seed in the tournament. This is a program that could contend for it all. And I think I'm not saying that they can develop, they may have a bad week or two and then still develop into that, but we'll be able to tell early on that, like, immediately if this team is already in that spot of if they're already a well-oiled machine. And because this isn't a matter of not being able to get work in like the football team did, for example, because of COVID and not be able to have some of that regular stuff. Like they've had a pretty regular camp here in terms of being able to go in and get ready for this. So I think this is a team that we are seeing the ceiling right now in terms of how well this team can play together. How they handle adversity throughout the season will tell the story of how far they'll be able to take it in the tournament for me. So guard play is always important. I truly feel Coleman will drive this team and take it as far as he can, as long as he just drives the ship. Don't turn the ball over too many times. Shoot the shots that are in your game, and distribute the ball. But there's so many positives to this team right now, and it's easy to see there being a different hero on a week in and week out basis. Exactly. When we come in and talk about it, and who's the next, who's right now it's Coleman. It's Matt Coleman is definitely the flavor of the week because of his excellent performance in the Maui Invitational. But we're going to be talking about different cats all year long, stepping up and being that guy.
yeah, and the good thing is that, like, we talked about how they haven't played a perfect game yet. These are all, there's been so much to come out of each game that has provided Shaka Smart coaching opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's what, if they were already kind of playing their max perfect level, in Asheville in this tournament, it's kind of hard for a coach to come out of that finding ways to improve. There's plenty for them to improve on. And that leads me to what, the X factor here, I know you guys wanted to discuss, and that's Shaka Smart's hair and what it's lending to success this team has seen early on. Like it's the team MVP so far, right?
Yeah, easily.
How would I look with that, man? I mean, I know I got some grades, but I feel like I could probably pull something like that off,
I
man.
think you could, man.
Yeah.
And I'll be disappointed as we go throughout the season if not. Maybe just don't even mess with it until they lose. And because I think that's what Shaka's doing.
You know what's
I
amazing? In a regular year, non-COVID, if he had this hair, they would be selling like wigs like at the start of the season.
Yeah.
And
Oh, man.
I might just try to get one for on the next show that I'm on with you guys.
I mean,
Man.
it's the power. It's whatever's working. It's whatever is emanating from the look. It's because I didn't think he'd keep it. I told you guys I thought he looked like Maxwell from the late 90s, early 2000s Maxwell, but not quite Maxwell. If you know what I'm saying. So
But it's just fun to watch, right, guys? I mean, isn't this exciting? It's like nice to have this football season's ending. Like we have something to look forward to, the men's and the women's team. I mean, like it's just nice to have something that, just is positive, instead of just coming on here being like, why didn't you run the ball 20 times? Why did you know what I mean? Like, it's just nice to have something. And I think Shaka's built this up, man. I mean, we joke a lot, but his last 2 years here have really set the tone, starting with the NIT that we started off with, guys. I think there's something there to keeping these players together. And they want to win for each other. Like you see Greg Brown on Twitter is like literally just tweeting just about how they're together and like how they play for each other. And that stuff was never on Twitter before before the last couple of years. So I think there's something to it.
Yeah, and a special shout for the women's program and what Vic Schaefer's doing there. What a hire by Crystal Conte going back to, and that it might not be this year there, but they're already showing like vast improvement and putting together some big wins. But God, I mean, he's going to have that team, that program in the next couple seasons. I mean, really competing at the national level for championship. So yeah, it's exciting times, especially moving into a new arena soon. And
when you look at the way that he's already changed the recruiting in the short time he's been on campus and he's already coaching up, and there's pretty good players that are on campus right now, and he's really done a nice job with it so far. What's coming from this, and it's just this is a program changing hire, and like you said, Mike, smash hire there. It's what Chris Del Conte, to go back to the quickly to go back to not so good sports feelings. What is it called, Kerry? Happy sports segment?
To go back to like a less, we're going to try to use like more kind of like positive words here. So to say like, instead of like a negative sports experience, we'll just say like a less positive sports experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
that's very 2020.
to trickle back into that.
I'm working on it,
the smash hire in football, we know what it is. And that's what Chris Del Conte has shown that he wants to do, and that's what he wants to be known for. So it's no surprise that he went out and he said, who's the best coach in the country? Who is going to come in here and who's the best fit? Who's the best coach? Who can come in here and be a program changer right now? Schaefer, boom, you go get him. And he's here. And it's already paying dividends. And that's
and in a weird way, retaining Shaka.
Right.
In a weird way, right? Like people wanted him gone. Like
yeah.
That's why, I mean, we got about 2 minutes here before we got to call it, but like, that's why I have faith. I have a weird feeling about this, which is different from most Texas coaching searches. I'm so used to this, like, well, hey, we're going to go after Nick Saban. And then like, it ends up being Charlie Strong, or, or even like how bad the baseball coach search was botched a few years ago. And, Pierce has done fine. And I think he's building a decent program. I think they're going to be pretty good this coming season, but like, it's just the constant, you never get the big target. Texas is going to screw this up somehow. I don't have that feeling with this Urban Meyer thing. It's something seems different about it. So
Where's the national championship played at next year, Kerry? Because I'm gonna purchase tickets off of that, man.
Yeah, man.
Let me look. We'll close with that. Playoff
Yeah, it does feel-
2022.
It does feel different, you
Kerry
know.
rolled.
That's always a safe bet
Oh.
for anything.
The national championship. It says Los Angeles. Or no, hold on.
Let's go.
Indianapolis
What? Oh my god.
for the 21-22 season. Yeah, no thanks.
Indy.
Anyway,
Bummer.
well, before Zoom
yeah.
cuts us here, guys, we're down under a minute, but you guys think this thing happens before we record next week?
Yes.
I'm gonna say no.
Oh, come on.
I'm gonna go yes. I'm going yes.
Because last time we all agreed, Iowa State we lost. Texas running
All right. All right, fair point. Fair enough.
So it's a reverse jinx.
Yes.
There we go. All right. Well, somebody here is going to be wrong, and so we'll see what next week brings. But guys, this has been good. Here's to a positive sports experience.
Represent fatal, baby. All in 06 on the